Hello and welcome to the Pembrokeshire Bird Diary for 2022. I'm Annie Haycock from the Pembrokeshire Bird Group, here to tell you about a few of the birding highlights for March and April. March the 1st was calming enough for the Skokon wardens to get back to the island. The February storms had caused some damage to roofs and the solar panels, but the lighthouse was warm and dry, just as well because the weather was pretty unsettled for the rest of the month. However, across Wales as a whole, temperatures were a degree above average, with 50% more sunshine, but only 50% of the normal rainfall. Puffins have been out at sea during the winter. They were first seen back in Skokon waters on the 10th of March, with counts of 1,741 on the 15th and nearly 10,000 on the 22nd. Slowly, the smaller migrants started trickling in. The first sand martins were seen at Lysafran on the 4th. Before I go any further, I should say here that any first arrival dates in this talk are provisional. Not everyone posts on Twitter or the sightings blogs, and the final dates won't be known until John Green, the county recorder, has all the records in. The lists on the Pembrokeshire Avifauna website won't be updated until the annual bird report is out sometime in early 2023. But back to the birds. The first wheatears were reported on the blog on the 10th, males arriving first as usual. The first female arrived on Skokon on the 17th. One of the Skokon males had been ringed there in 2015, so had crossed the Sahara 14 times. Not bad for a species with a typical lifespan of 2 years. Cattle egrets were hanging around near Pembroke River on the 17th, and 8 were seen at Newport on the 21st, all beginning to show their orangey summer colours. There was a glaucous gull over Skokon on the 20th, seen briefly as it flew past the wheelhouse heading southeast. The pinkish bill and pale eye of this individual show that it is a young bird, as are most of the glaucous gulls seen in Pembrokeshire, and so perhaps not in much of a hurry to return to its Arctic breeding grounds. This map from birdsoftheworld.com shows where it should be heading. Great blackback gulls don't seem to wander as much as other species, though the Skokon colour ringing programme is showing that our gulls are regularly seen in Cornwall. Here, a Skokon bird with a red ring is eyeing up a Cornish bird, white ring, that's visiting the island. This map, generated from sightings of Skokon ringed great blackbacks, may look complicated, but what you need to know is that the larger circles mean more birds, so most birds are seen in Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Red represents birds less than 1 year old, orange are second-year birds, etc. So it should be clear that birds are more likely to travel longer distances in their first year of life. Gargany don't breed in Pembrokeshire, but a few pass through in most years. This pair were at the Tivy Marshes. Also on the 22nd, Skoma recorded their first ring ouzel and sand martin, and then a hoopoe on the 23rd. Skokon had a hoopoe the following day. Was it the same one trying to find its way back to continental Europe where it should be? From the middle of the month we were well in gear for the Wales Rookery Survey, a project organised by the Welsh Ornithological Society to assess the distribution and numbers of rooks across the country. The survey was based on random priority tetrads across Wales, and volunteers went out to look for rooks in those specific tetrads. The results for Pembrokeshire show that just under half of these tetrads contained at least one rookery. These are shown by the grey squares on the map. Hatch squares are tetrads without rookeries. However, there was the option to go further, so here in Pembrokeshire we looked at every rookery we knew about, and found some new ones too. By the end of April, the map looked like this. The red dots show occupied rookeries, while the black dots show historic sites that were no longer occupied. Some were lost due to deliberate disturbance, such as the removal of trees for development of buildings or road schemes. Others just disappeared with the passage of time, perhaps moving to a new site or combining with another rookery. Some probably disappeared because the farming practices around the rookeries changed, causing the food supply to diminish. We could also look at the rookeries another way. Here, the darker the blue, the more rook nests there were in a tetrad. White circles mean all known rookeries in that tetrad were checked, but no rook nests were found. The survey will continue in spring 2023, when there may be more dots to add to the maps. All records of rookeries, with counts of nests, are gratefully received. The unsettled weather continued in April, though again there was only about 50% of the average rainfall in Wales. Migrants continued to trickle in, many of them seeming to be late arriving and less often seen, according to the statistics from BirdTrack. This swallow graph is typical, the blue line showing the 2022 reporting rate compared to the average over the last 20 years or so. The reporting rate, for those of you unfamiliar with the system, is how often a species appears in a complete list submitted to BirdTrack. Records of single species don't count towards this statistic. The graph covers the whole season, so it looks like the birds not only arrived late, but they left earlier too. In early April, a hooper swan was picked up near Letterston after flying into overhead cables. Unfortunately, its injuries were so bad that it had to be put down. It had been ringed as a 3-year-old in Iceland in 1996, making it nearly 29 years old. According to the BTO, hooper swans have an average lifespan of 9 years, but the record is of one living more than 28 years after being ringed. Another hooper swan, called Pickles and kept in captivity at Leeds Castle, died last year, aged 30. But going back to the Letterston bird, this is almost certainly the same bird noted by Dave Astins at the GAN back in December. However, he only managed to get the last 3 figures, 846, so could not report the ring. The only other ringed hooper swan reported in Pembrokeshire, according to the Pembrokeshire Bird Reports anyway, was at Bosherston Lily Ponds in November 1996. That too had come from Iceland. But back to the incoming migrants. There were willow warblers at St David's and Marlowe's on the 3rd, as well as 35 pale-bellied brent geese on their way north, and also a little ringed plover at the GAN. The first redstart arrived on Skocombe on the 10th, and another half-dozen were reported throughout the county during the rest of the month. Sandwich terns were seen from the 11th. Grasshopper, reed and sedge warblers on the 12th, garden warbler and whitethroat on the 13th, and pied flycatchers from the 16th. The first mention of a cuckoo on the blog was on the 13th, though I think there were earlier claims on Facebook and elsewhere. For the past few years, a wrimble or two has overwintered on Skocombe. No sign of that happening last winter, and the first one was seen on the 14th of April. There were regular sightings across the county after that, with the biggest flock being 55 at Pencarnon on the 25th. Resident species such as dunnock, robin and blackbird were all well into their breeding season now, but seabirds are barely getting settled in. The first razorbill egg of the year was seen on Skocombe on the 15th, the earliest ever recorded on the island, and 13 days earlier than the average since Richard and Giselle have been there. Lapland buntings are best known as autumn visitors, but April and even May records aren't uncommon. This one was on Skocombe on the 20th of April. The first common swift was also reported on the 20th. Then Skocombe had an alpine swift on the 22nd. The map shows that the bird has overshot its breeding range by some way, but for a fast-flying swift, it probably isn't any distance at all. This was followed by a shorelark on the 23rd. It was only the 4th record for the island. Strangely, the first 2 were also on the 23rd of April, in 1957 and 1961. The last one seen in Pembrokeshire was on Skomer in October 2010. Tree pipits were seen from the 22nd, spotted flycatcher from the 25th, and there was a windchat on Skocombe on the 26th. Wood warblers were singing in Minir on the 29th. Well, that's a quick reminder of March and April 2022. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll look out for the next edition.